sum it up, or kind of piggyback on what you said, the pro-life movement has been a complete failure since Roe v. Wade. That's all there is to it. We have absolutely, utterly failed and not made one single step forward. We have actually made the problem exceptionally worse. The first thing we have to do is realize that we have done it completely wrong, mainly because it was not biblical and it was not constitutional the way we've been doing it. So, in Oklahoma, for example, if Roe v. Wade was overturned today, in Oklahoma, which they say is one of the most pro-life states in the union, if Roe v. Wade was overturned today, abortion would still be legal in Oklahoma. Why? Because of pro-life legislation. Because of all of the pro-life laws that we have placed on the books, they have created legal avenues on how you can kill your child. So even if Roe v. Wade was overturned, Oklahoma, abortion would continue without a hitch. So some of the bills that you've heard about across the nation that are victories for the pro-life organizations, and we're talking National Right to Life, we're talking the big pro-life organizations celebrate these as victories when they have states like Oklahoma or Mississippi or Kansas pass them, and they're not. For example, how about the Down syndrome bill? If you're tested, the pregnant woman's tested and the baby is tested to have Down syndrome, you can't kill your baby if it has Down syndrome. But if it doesn't have Down syndrome, you're good to go ahead and go kill your baby. It's very, very sick when you put it that way. But that is what we're, as pro-life people, they're like, that's a victory. We did that. No, that's not a victory at all. That's making it worse. And I'll follow up a little bit on what you said about how that actually makes it a lot worse. The pain-capable bill. That was a recent one. You know, you can't kill your baby if it's old enough to feel pain, or you can't kill it in a way where it can feel pain. But if it's young enough where it can't, where you can figure out how to do it when it doesn't feel pain, then you can go ahead and kill it. It makes absolutely zero sense. One of the most sickening ones, or two of them, is the ultrasound bill. That was a big one. Well, let's pass legislation that says if a woman wants to go have an abortion, she has to view an ultrasound first. Then once she sees a picture of her baby, then she can kill it. How demented is that? And these are the pro-life victories that they've said. The 3-day waiting period, which actually just got struck down in Oklahoma. If you want to have an abortion, you have to say you want to have an abortion, then you have to meditate on it for 3 days. So basically, once you premeditate it, then you're good to go. This is what our pro-life movements have gotten us, is bills like this. And they're still doing it. And I just say that to a lot of people, no, that's not true, that can't be true. Call your local National Right to Life representative and talk to them about it. And they're gonna be like, oh no, those are victories because of this or this. Or call Abby Johnson, who charges like $10,000 at a speaking event. She's for these bills. She will absolutely oppose equal protection bills and bills of abolition. And that's just the reality of it. And I've already talked about how and that's just in Oklahoma, a lot of people are like, well, you gotta overturn Roe v. Wade, you gotta chip away at it and little baby steps. No, those little baby steps are actually creating paths to kill your baby. Basically when, where, and how. That's all they do. That is all regulatory, incremental pro-life do, and pro-life legislation does, and we've got to completely turn away from it. And it's really sad to think about how many hundreds of millions of dollars have been donated to pro-life organizations, and how many thousands of volunteers they've had, yet abortions are on the rise. Like you say, abortions are on the rise, even in places like Oklahoma. And the reason that is because their goal was never to end abortion. It never was. And I have had he was the vice president of the Oklahoma National Right to Life in my office multiple times, and I've asked him point blank, do you think abortion's murder? And he will not say that it is. Because they don't think it is. And that, of course, we haven't ended abortion because that was never the goal under their leadership. So those are pro-life legislation. That's pro-life legislation. That's the pro-life movement. Now, equal protection or abolition basically hinges on 3 things, and you did a great job identifying it. But really, what it comes down to is life begins at the moment of fertilization. This is what an equal protection bill says. Life begins at the moment of fertilization. If you intentionally kill that life, it is considered murder. It's equal. It's consistent with other murder statutes. And if any court says otherwise, that court opinion, because that's what it is, it's an opinion, three aspects of an equal protection bill. When I go to Oklahoma, I can pull 10 people off the street, nine of them are gonna agree with me. They're like, I thought that's what we were doing the whole time. And that's really what they thought, that they really think that abortion's murder. But those are the two huge differences between pro-life and equal protection. Now, saying that, even like I said, to move on number 2 here, we have to change the way that we're thinking about this, because every once in a while I'll try to come up with some kind of, legal, how do we legally slip through this or slip through that? And we can't do it. We just have to, because it all goes back to the Roe v. Wade opinion. That's got to be ignored by a state. That's all there is to it. That is the only way that you will end abortion, is to treat that opinion as completely null and void. The courts have a purpose. I am not anti-judicial system. When there's pieces of legislation when it comes to taxes or education or whatever it may be, that's fine. Let's get their opinion on it if you want. They do have a purpose. However, the U.S. Supreme Court or the Maryland State Supreme Court or any other Supreme Court, any court out there, no court, no judge has the authority to authorize the killing of innocent children. They don't. And if they say they do, or if they offer that opinion, they're flat out wrong, and the state government, the Senate, the representatives, and the governor need to flat out ignore them and enforce the Constitution, which clearly identifies everybody has a right to life. That's the only way we're going to end it. So Dietrich Bonhoeffer, which a lot of you are familiar with, he was a pastor and theologian during World War II. He died in the Flossenburg concentration camp. He was talking about Nazi Germany, but he said, we're not simply to bandage the wounds of the victims of injustice or to drive a spoke into the wheel itself. And that's the problem, is the pro-life movement, a lot of our churches, we've just been bandaging the wounds of the injustice. But we need to follow Dietrich Bonhoeffer's lead here and actually drive a spoke in it and end it. So, moving on to lastly is basically the common objections that you're going to find, and this is key, because so many times people agree, yes, I agree with abolition, I agree with equal protection, everything that this bill says, but then they run into pretty fierce objections, and you will. You're going to run into 3 people who are going to object to equal protection bills, and I've run a bill of abolition for 5 years in the Oklahoma State Senate. Oklahoma, again, there's 48 state senators, 40 of them are Republican. Supposedly the most pro-life state in the union. The Oklahoma Baptists basically rule the entire state. We're talking very evangelical, conservative. I live there for a reason, right? However, the three groups that you're going to run into that oppose equal protection with everything they have is, one, your large church organizations. So in Oklahoma, it was the Catholics and the Baptist General Convention of Oklahoma. I had the executive leadership in my office multiple times. They were not good meetings. They don't like that because it's too radical. It's not nice. I know, it's crazy. But you will run into that, including pastors. Some pastors aren't going to like it. I know they've got a lot of pastors in here tonight, don't we? Yeah. A lot of pastors. If you're going to go talk to some of your pastor colleagues, they're not going to like it. Bottom line is, if they preach this from the pulpit, they're going to lose tithe dollars. That's all there is to it. The best story I have on that, I had a good friend of mine. Our families are friends. He was a pastor at a church for 10 years. It was one of the bigger churches in rural Oklahoma. There was, a couple hundred people or something like that. And he said, hey, I want you to come and I want you to talk to the church about the difference between pro-life and abolition, or pro-life and equal protection, as you guys call it. I said, that's great, I'll do it. So he announced it to the church. The board got very, very mad, said, no, we cannot have that spoken about in the church. And he said, well, I'm going to have him come anyway. So I came, half the church didn't show up. That was on Sunday evening. On Monday, the board convened and fired him. Wow. He put up flyers about an abolition rally at the Capitol. The board came and ripped the flyers down. Because they're not appealing to everyone. So you're going to deal with that. And I've got endless stories. The other one you're going to run into is pro-life organizations. They're going to say this is going to set us behind all the work that we've done. This is the worst thing that we could do. Call Abby Johnson and have her come speak at a equal protection rally and offer $10,000. She still won't come. This is contrary to what they truly believe. They don't believe abortion's murder. They believe that the Supreme Court has the authority to say it's okay to kill your baby. And the last one is the Republican Party. So the Republican Party's not gonna like it either, because it's not nice enough. It's gonna come across way too radical, way too conservative. And like I said, in Oklahoma, I had huge fights with leadership. I mean, if there was a state that should be able to pass an equal protection bill, it was Oklahoma. And I've spoken to multiple different states, and all of them say, why didn't you guys do it? And I'm like, well, yeah. So you're gonna run into those three people. Now, specifically on the bill, you'll hear abolition or equal protection is unconstitutional. Again, we've already addressed that. All you gotta do is say, how do you figure? They usually go back, well, Roe v. Wade said that, Roe v. Wade also once ruled that black people were private property and had no rights. So if we were alive at the time, where would we have been on that stance? Sadly, a lot of pastors and legislators I know would have been on the side of keeping slavery legal. That's just all there is to it. They would have fallen in line with some Supreme Court opinions and gone from there. So, and a good example that's kind of been, marijuana's crazy. I obviously don't support it, but it's actually been a little bit of a blessing in disguise, because it's given me some great arguing points. Because in 2010, in Gonzalez versus Reich, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that states could not distribute marijuana. And it was actually against federal law. It was upholding a federal law about marijuana. You know how many states are distributing marijuana?
Yes.
All over, including Oklahoma, what's happening? Nothing. There's marijuana dispensaries and grow houses all over the place, because the Supreme Court can't say that. State can do whatever they want, whether you like it or not. And so I'm like, so if you're gonna be on, and I argued with the President Pro Tem of the Senate in a committee meeting on this bill, and he just didn't have anything to say. He's like, well, we can't do this because the Supreme Court said, and I was like, well, under your watch, we're distributing marijuana. That was against Supreme Court ruling. So you can use that. Abolition calls for secession or equal protection. Again, equal protection is a secessionist idea, and wanting to peel off from the Union. Nowhere in your bill, what's your bill? What's the bill number? Does it have a bill number?
We don't have a number yet.
Not a number yet. But that bill, nowhere in the language calls for seceding from the Union, and neither did mine. That's just a scare tactic. Abolition will put, or equal protection will put all mothers who have an abortion in prison. That's not true either. So the way these bills are written is it just makes murder equal across the board. So the example I give is if a young woman has an abusive boyfriend, gets pregnant, the boyfriend forces her to have an abortion, right, against her will, do you think that a court is gonna put her in prison? No. The court will show leniency, just like they do in all other circumstances. Are they gonna put the doctor and the boyfriend in prison? Probably, as they should, forever. They should. However, 35, 36-year-old career woman, right? She's gonna lose her promotion if she keeps this baby. She goes and kills the baby, are they gonna put her in prison? Probably, as they should. So that's up to the judicial system. All we're saying is murder statutes, homicide statutes need to be enforced equally. Equal protection does not allow for mother's life to be saved in the pregnancy if the pregnancy is dangerous. So that's probably the biggest one. That's the one that the churches and the pro-life organizations are going to throw out. You can't enforce this equally because there's no exception to save the life of the mother. That's not true either, because what an equal protection bill does is it just says you're going to it charges doctors to treat all lives equally. So if there's a car accident and a mom and her 2-year-old children come to the emergency room, that ER doctor is just going to do everything he can to keep both of those people alive. And if he doesn't succeed, and he only ends up saving the mother, you think he's going to get in trouble? No. Basic medical triage. So in Oklahoma, I actually took language from the medical statutes and I'm paraphrasing, but it basically says doctors aren't going to be prosecuted or held liable as long as they've exhausted all of their medical resources to save, everybody involved. Because right now they're not. They're actually intentionally killing. So it's not going to put women in danger. It absolutely will not. Equal protection bill would create backroom and unsafe abortions. I have a hard time not laughing at that one. Because murders that take place like in the alleyways are kind of unsafe. We still make murders illegal. So yeah, is there going to be some bad things that happen? Yeah, but that doesn't mean that you don't need to make it illegal. So, but that one, I've heard that one a lot. We need to overturn Roe v. Wade first. You'll hear that a lot. We need to overturn Roe v. Wade first. That comes from the pro-life movement. Now, here's the problem. There's a group of law professors in Louisiana who've gotten together several times, and they've said, and you alluded to this, they say if you want to overturn Roe v. Wade, which I think Roe v. Wade needs to be flat out ignored, right. But if your goal is to overturn Roe v. Wade, the only way you're going to do it is through an equal protection bill, because most pro-life bills get struck down because they're not equal. They're highly discriminatory. And so even the Supreme Court's like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. And that's how we got here in the first place. So, but what's crazy about that is the pro-life movement says we've got to overturn Roe v. Wade first. Yet they will not support legislation that is needed to overturn Roe v. Wade. Complete hypocrisy. So those are some of your common objections. Now, and I'll finish with where the movement's gone, because it's good to kind of get an idea of what's happening nationwide. So in 2016, Senate Bill 1118 was the first bill, I filed the first bill of abolition or equal protection in the nation. In 2016, that was not that long ago. And it was just me and like 2 or 3 other guys, and we were kind of crazies, right? In 4 years' time, at the end of next year, there's going to be 9 states who have filed equal protection bills. In Oklahoma specifically, the large church organization who says nobody could, fight against, that organization is almost split down the middle, because the executive level Baptists came out and said, we're not going to support this. The majority of the churches said, are you crazy? So there's about to be a change in Oklahoma Baptist General Convention leadership. The Catholics are really struggling to stick together on this as well. And so you've got all over, so in my state, it's going like wildfire. We went from having a couple hundred people at the Capitol in 2017 to like 5,000 people at the Capitol in 2020, that was earlier this year. Now, we still haven't passed the bill, but for a movement to spread that fast, it's crazy. Talk to people in Florida, Wisconsin, in Arizona, there was a freshman class of House of Representatives elected. He's an Army veteran, 21-year tank operator. He is 100% on board. And I talked to him about all this stuff, and he wasn't surprised at all. He's like, yeah, I could see that. I could see that pushback coming. So they're going to get it going as well. So nationwide, it's moving. In individual states, it's moving. And so I hope you can kind of grasp that, the huge difference between abolition and equal protection, because it's massive. Where your objections are going to come from. Always remember to keep changing your way of thinking, because you will find, well, what if we do this to kind of, get around the Supreme Court? No, it's just got to be flat out ignored. And I know it does seem like a impossible feat. And I'll say this on the movement also. In Oklahoma, there was 2 8-year incumbent senators who got beat in the primary because they voted against my abolition bill, and their opponent was for abolition. Wow. We know incumbents don't get beat, right? Especially when you're not there. And there was hundreds of thousands of dollars put in to keep them in office, and they got beat. So next year, even though I'm not in the Senate, there's going to be another equal protection bill put forward. So, there's multiple statistics that talk about how the younger generation views abortion, and it's becoming less popular because of medical technologies and all. And I think it's more than that. I think God plays a role in everything, and young people are much more receptive to the idea of, hey, this is an actual life, and if we take this and say it's not murder, then we're just complete hypocrites. And so we have that going for us, and we got to keep in mind that the God we serve, He orders everything. And just look at the stories of Noah and Moses and Joseph and David in the Old Testament. And actually, and more recently, the Revolutionary War, right? These guys, we weren't supposed to, how could you beat Britain, a world superpower at the time? But we did. People would have thought that ending slavery was completely never going to happen, but it did. World War II. Nobody's going to stop the Nazi war machine, right? But it was stopped. So that's where we're at. You talked about a historic moment. This is the next few years will be very historic regarding this front. So I think if the church comes together, if the small remnant actually gets active and goes for it, we'll absolutely do it. And another one of my favorite quotes from Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He went on to say, silence in the face of evil is evil itself. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. So that concludes my remarks. Do you want me to open up for questions? For questions, yes.
Delegate Rick Metzger, thank you so much for such an informative. A couple of things I'd like to share.